Hello, and welcome to Nomadic Diaries, the re-entry series. I'm Doreen Cumberford, the host.
And I'm Linda Mueller, the co-host.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Nomadic Diaries. It is my pleasure and privilege today to introduce you to a friend and a colleague and someone I've known for several years, and that is Jerry Jones. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Doreen. It's great to be here with you.
Oh, it's so great to see you and hear you again. Jerry is, for our listeners' benefit, Jerry is an American cross-cultural listener, learner, trainer, speaker, and coach. He has served many iterations as a transition specialist for lots of people hundreds of people living beyond their passport culture. And so he's going to talk to us a little bit today about his returns and specifically his repatriation experiences, because he came back from China twice, I believe. Is that correct, Jerry?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Two different times, about 5 years apart,
Mhm.
and a total of about 14, 15 years in China altogether.
Can you walk us a little bit through that process of what it was like, your first and your second returns?
Yeah, they were polar opposite,
Yeah.
completely different, and both hard. Right? Both of them had their own challenges,
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
never easy. Our first one was if I could write a book about how it should be done, how it should
Mhm.
go, like this was it. We had great friends on the ground, said goodbye as well, got on the plane, landed. Our friends had signs made for us, welcome. They let us
Yeah.
stay with them for a week or so. He actually runs a company, gave me a job so I could have a kind of a place to kick off and start. He they like that family paid our rent for
Oh,
5 months when we landed.
wow.
Just so they hung pictures, like they hung family pictures up in our apartment when we got back. I mean, we were so well taken care of. We had great community, met a lot of great people. It was amazing, and it was about maybe 6 months in, even though it was amazing and I was loving it, was loving them. It was a great experience. I was itching to be back in
Yeah.
China again.
Yeah.
Like it really didn't take long, and it was about 2 years. 2 years that we stayed in that place, and that last year was kind of working our way back to China. And then we stayed there for about 5 years, and then did it again, did the repatriation thing.
Now, the second repatriation experience, was that not provoked in part by COVID?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It was,
And
and
so
it
tell
wasn't,
us.
it wasn't a direct, we didn't get out of
Oh,
China to get away from COVID. I mean, good
okay.
thing that would have been a misled
Okay.
endeavor. But it impacted us financially. Like I had kind of morphed into doing some independent contract work, and a
Mhm.
lot of that was with international schools.
Sure.
And international schools, like when COVID hit, just got the crunch put on them, right? Like
Mm.
they
Sure.
all of a sudden were wondering if they were going to be able to open the next year. And so, transition support was
Mhm.
was one of the first things to get
Sure.
cut, and was working with other groups as well. But we kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I made the decision in that process. I wasn't ready to come back to the States.
Hmm.
Wanted
Yes.
to give it a go somewhere. And
Yes.
so we looked at the map and we found this little bitty island, was right in the middle of Europe and North
Yeah.
Africa, Middle East, and I had connections all over the place there. And I was gonna go do this next big thing and do what I'd done in China. And I got to go other places too while I was in China, but did a lot in China. Was so excited to do this thing and expand and do something new. And at that point, I don't think any of us had really like reality of COVID hadn't set in yet.
Hmm.
How
Right.
much it was gonna, this is gonna blow over. We're gonna get
Yeah.
past this. Yeah, of course it has an impact
Yeah.
now. But we tried to do that right in the middle of the pandemic, and it was just a mess. So we stayed our 90 days, which was what we were allowed. And then we flew back to the States. For me, it was unwillingly. I think my wife was ready to get back, and it was just,
Yeah.
she was exhausted from all of the transition, all of the moves, and ready to be back in the States. I wasn't. but
Yeah.
that's where we landed. And so
Yeah.
that was just a whole different experience completely.
So that sounds like it was pretty emotionally and psychologically difficult for a long period of time. And when we
Yeah.
live through these liminal periods of time, months,
Hmm.
months
Hmm.
of transitioning, it can really wear you down.
It did. It did. And I didn't, you don't, the challenge is you don't recognize that's happening when it's happening, right? Like you're just
That's
going
right.
day to day, doing the next thing, excited still about doing something new.
Yeah.
And that's was the challenge for me, I think, was this is what I do. I love transition. You know,
Yes.
I love to move. I love to go to a new place. I love change. And I
Yes.
teach people about that
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
And I didn't realize just how much of how much of that stuff that I teach applied to me. And it was just such a different experience that,
Yeah.
you know, there are moments turn into days and days turn into seasons of really kind of forgetting to take care of yourself and not recognizing how much of an impact this is actually having. So it did have a big impact.
I was talking with my co-presenter in the series on repatriation yesterday, and we are talking about how insidious it is that these little things that they start to be little.
Mm.
Oh, you don't sleep so well at night for a
Right.
few nights, or oh, you're not eating exactly on
Hmm.
schedule, or oh, your exercise. And actually, it's these little things that over a period of time
Yeah.
all build up and have huge unintended
Yeah,
consequences
they really do.
that make it harder, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Having that awareness, coming to that awareness, I think allowing that awareness, because when you acknowledge the negative impact, you know, you're also letting go of some of that. Those of us who love transition, you come in with full anticipation. You're excited about that new thing, and you
Yeah.
have to acknowledge, hey, that's going to take longer than I thought it was going to. And there are a lot of pieces involved here, a lot of moving pieces, and you just have to step back and let yourself take care of yourself and then the people around you, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like put the
Uh,
mask on first, start
yeah,
breathing, and then
exactly.
then take care of your people.
Yeah. Because I always say novelty has a very short runway.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
And I know my brain is always looking for the novel. And so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's the challenge is how do we relocate ourselves in a holistic manner that takes care of
Right.
every part of us, but at the same time feeds that spirit of adventure.
Right.
What did you come up with that
Yeah.
supported your next iteration?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the pieces that I had to acknowledge, and this is the advice I give anyone who's doing this. There's a lot of talk when you're about to make a big transition about expectations.
Yeah.
And so people typically land on, hey, set high expectations and just go for it, right? Like maybe that's the advice. Or the opposite is just go in with zero expectations and you'll be fine, right? If you don't expect anything,
Yeah.
you'll get there. And I always struggled with that. And the advice that I had to come to grips with for myself was more around postpone your expectations, right? Like set your expect. It's okay to have high
Yes.
expectations. You're going to do great things and it's going to be
Yeah.
amazing and it's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to be wonderful.
Yeah.
It's going to take longer. That's what transition does, right? That's what transition
Exactly.
is. It's
And it's
going to take
yeah.
longer.
It's
Uh,
going to take longer and it's going to look different from the
it
way
is. It
vision has
is.
programmed it
That's
because
right.
we program it a certain way in our vision and
Yeah.
all the sensory ways that we can. And
Yep.
then something else gets delivered and you go, oh, this is a different kind of
Didn't
baby.
see that coming, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it's even like I like that. Like I would even tweak it to like postpone your flexible expectations, right? Let them be flexible. We all know
Yeah.
flexibility is important, but it's
Yeah.
also important to be firm, right? Like it's important
Yes.
to make a
Yes.
decision. People who are only
Yeah.
flexible have a lot of fun for a little bit, but that's on that same short runway, right?
Exactly.
Um, but people who are firm and not flexible, they break when it
Yeah.
gets too heavy, when it gets too hard, right? So
Yeah.
I think that balance of firm flexibility is a rich way to set your expectations,
Yeah.
so that one, they can be met, but at the same time, you can change when you recognize they need to.
And I'm sure that when you came back for the second iteration, you ran into different experiences or societal norms because in that time, America had changed.
That's a
People had
sweet way
changed.
to say it. Yeah. 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 Um, yeah, it was just, I remember kind of processing, every once in a while somebody would ask about how repatriation is going. And I'm just like, I've never seen anything like this before.
No.
And I understand there's lots of different experiences
Yeah.
and lots of different uh, dynamics that play into different people's. But for me,
Yeah.
like I had written the lists and I had taught the stuff, and like I thought I had the pieces of repatriation figured
Mm.
out. This one was done in a pandemic while the world is going crazy, to a country that is probably going crazier than most or all. And then the political
Mm.
mess around that,
Yeah.
some connected to COVID, some connected to just who we
Sure.
are. Like, and that hasn't really slowed down since. But it was just, I didn't know how to expect. I didn't know, I didn't see those realities. That's not in the textbook way to do repatriation, right? Like
No,
you
no.
always say, yeah, your people, your places change as you do while you're away, and then you come back to it. But the volume was just turned way up on all of that, and it was intense.
Yeah, and I think then you're left with this experience of being a spacewalking,
Mm-hmm.
of being an astronaut. So a lot of people struggle with their feelings of like identity, and you came
Right.
back to a world that was politically polarized, and
Hmm.
then also absolutely jangled, a country whose nerves were jangled by this huge pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did this affect you in a very personal way? I mean, did you have some
Yeah.
experiences of who am I or how do I recreate my identity in this crazy environment? Is that different from what someone would experience today, for instance, Jerry?
That's a great question. And my answer to did I experience that is absolutely yes. Because for me, that was my role, and had been I
Mm.
had been building that for 15 years plus, and culture was my thing. I loved
Yeah,
it. I love to just explore what happens when people who are really
yeah,
different from each other get
yeah,
into the same space and try to do the same thing together,
yeah,
and figure out how to do that. I think there's tremendous value in that, in working with people who
sure.
are different and different perspectives and ideas. I think it makes everything richer and better, but it's hard, and there's some challenges to that. So I dove into that space and loved it. Talked to lots of people and got to sit
Mhm.
and, started two companies just to do that. Worked with another company extensively, and it was great. That's who I was, and it was very much a part of what I did day in, day out. And now I'm sitting, at that point, I'm sitting back in this country. I'm no longer an expat, and I kind of sensed it the first time I repatriated. It was like, okay, we set the timer on your relevance, right? Like how long do want to
Yeah,
people how long do people want to listen to the
yeah,
guy who says I used to do this,
yeah,
or when I did this is
yeah.
how it was for me, because everything moves
Well,
so quickly. And so there was a lot of soul searching during that time, and just kind of
right.
thinking, what do I do now? Do I just go out and get a job? Do I do my own thing? Do I try to keep this running? But it was very much, just felt like a huge piece of me was gone. And it was the part that I enjoyed the most. It was the part that I had the most fun with, right? Like I loved being a foreigner. I loved
Me
uh,
too.
bumbling
I'm still a
around,
foreigner.
trying to make this language work and trying
Yeah,
to figure things out. Like that
yeah,
was, I really enjoyed that.
yes.
And then now all of a sudden, I'm not a foreigner, and nobody really cares, right? Like that's not the most exciting thing for anyone. So,
Yeah, I completely understand because after 35 years of being an expat. I mean, my
Hmm.
identity was so bonded and so wrapped
Yeah.
up around those roots that
Yeah.
I tried to be an expat in America. Nobody knows what one is. And so,
Yeah.
what are you trying to do? And so it's becomes very confusing, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
creating. So, okay, I'm the person that used to be and used to do and used to have and used to think. And
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
who am I going to be? And what choices am I faced with? And who am I
Right.
going to
Right.
be? And we have to, I think it's really important to take a lot of time. Do you tell people to take a lot of time thinking about who they're going to choose to be?
I think that's great advice. I think that's a great thing and that's a process, right? Like you don't just sit
Right.
down and make a decision.
No.
There's a lot that goes into that, and there's factors that are involved in that you have no control over, right? Like for me, I ended up with a job, and it was about the time that I did this. I had this soul searching moment where I was like, okay, do I want to pursue a job and just pay the bills and just do the thing and just settle
Mhm.
into that and let it be what it is? Or do I want to do this thing that I've been doing and really pursue it? And I decided that, and I'm gonna work to make this happen.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was I was not super motivated at the time. I was still struggling more than I let myself think, but I was like, I really want to do that.
Yeah.
And I remember making a video about it, and I said, and if there was a job that came open, I'd take it, right? Like that it was something that I
Yes.
could love.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
one of those came, and it was great. It was all about helping people who are different from each other figure out how they do the same thing together. And so that's been amazing and it's been wonderful. But that I had no control over that. I wasn't expecting
Yeah.
that. It just kind of came out of nowhere. And
And you were voting for yourself. You were voting for what makes you
yeah,
come
yeah,
alive.
yeah.
And
I knew that. I was able to really weigh those out and say, no,
uh-huh.
I know who I am somewhere
Yeah.
in there. I
Yeah.
know that I still want to do this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to pursue that. And then things changed, and I got to do that and have a
Wow.
job. So like that works well. It works for
This
me.
and I think sometimes when we can just get ourselves out of the way,
Yeah.
I'll speak for myself. When I can get my big stupid self out of the way, yeah, things can fall together. They can,
Yeah.
life can fall together like that. And I think for people who are moving home, how much does faith play a role if you
Mm.
have faith?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's say that maybe half, maybe 75, I don't know how many people have faith nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you have advice for someone who has a definite belief system, like they're
Mhm.
Buddhist or they're something, on
Yeah. Yeah.
how to deploy their faith?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that it's one of those scenarios when you're going through massive transition. It's like you get to scrape a lot of the crap off of your faith, right? Like, and it doesn't matter what your faith is. There's probably
Yeah,
a lot of crap on it, right? Like,
yeah,
and that's just how culture works. I mean, we build
yes,
things up and we put more stuff on there, and I think situations like this really dig down deep and say, hey, what's real here?
yeah,
Or what are you going to believe is real here?
yeah,
And then what are you going to do with that versus,
yeah,
your normal system of faith expression, whatever that looks like. I think so. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a refining thing. I think it's good for people to really explore every part of themselves, and faith is
Mhm.
obviously for a lot of people a huge part of that.
Sure,
And you can choose to go a lot of different directions. You can put
sure.
the stamp, happy stamp everything and connect that to your faith, right? But that falls apart pretty quickly when it gets hot. You can
Mhm.
just explore the realities of all of those little pieces that you say you believe consistently, constantly. They get to be tested, and so I think for a lot of people it's been refining, and it's been good. I worked with uh, a lot of people who just got faced with the immediate removal from this life that they had built, especially in China. You know,
Yes.
there was our community,
Yeah.
which was largely built around the
Sure.
international school. Like they sent their people home for 2 weeks until it blows over, right? Well, those people never came back. Some of them did. Most of them
Right.
that ended their expat assignment, or at least that one.
Yeah.
And
Traumatic.
it was,
Traumatic.
and so there was no good goodbyes. There was no none of that.
No
Um,
closure, no,
right,
no
right,
celebrations, no sort of counting the moments. So
exactly.
harsh.
It's
And they
so much of that was
pets.
gone. And I
Oh,
think that was their, like, that's where the faith came in for them. Like they
yeah.
were, that's kind of what connected them, drew them together. And
Yeah.
so it was absolutely a part of everything.
And so, looking back, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you gained from China that you still deploy or use in in your homecoming experience? Because I have a belief that once we've gone, we are forever sewing our future
Yeah.
together. And I
Yeah.
added another country in the process, which was and so it's a constant, it's constantly going back and sewing these pieces together. So do you have
Yeah.
some lessons or an experience you'd like to share about that for our audience?
Yeah. One of the things that stands out when you, when you say that, we often use the phrase that we're being hard on China, and we think back to those experiences as an expat. As you go
Mhm.
in, this is all new and this is weird and strange, like with any transition. But we would, whether it was traffic or whether it was lining up or
Yeah,
it was even signage. We used to get have so much fun with the
yeah, yeah,
mistranslated English, and
yes,
I love
yes,
that stuff.
yeah.
Um, but now being back, it's like we've been given new lenses,
Yeah,
and you'd be surprised how much just really bad English is is used in
not okay.
marketing
Yeah,
anywhere, wherever you are, right?
exactly. Even
And
English-speaking
how
countries.
traffic or lining up or whatever it
Uh,
is. It's
yeah,
so we know that we'll just look at something here and we're like, yep, hard on China because it's us too. And so I think having those lenses which is
yeah,
what I love about cross-cultural transition, right? Like you get to see a new place and you get to see a new thing and a new people. But you also get to see yourself like you've never seen yourself before. And I think that has been the biggest factor as far
mhm.
as what has changed for us is we've got this opportunity to see who we are and how we respond, and
Sure.
that's different. So I
Is it?
think being open to that is critical.
Yes. So being open to seeing yourself, it's like a gigantic mirror. It
Yeah. Yeah.
it holds yourself up to yourself. Now, may I ask you how your children mastered this
Yeah.
experience called
Hmm.
their second repatriation? Because they had been in China, back to the States, back to China through this very grueling situation, and then transported back to America, which was, I'm sure, felt like more
Yeah.
foreign
Yeah.
after the pandemic or during the pandemic.
Right.
Did
Right.
they process it differently from you?
Yeah, they did. They did. And it was like there's so many pieces that I can point to that say that it was kind of their first language, and for me it was a second language, right? Like
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
was very much like I would describe the internet now, right? Like they've grown up with that, they've experienced it, it's always been their normal. And so they understand things about it that I don't, and they do things very naturally that I have to be very intentional about. I watched them do that through the transition, the moves didn't phase them. We would move into a new place and they would just kind of settle into the new existence.
Yeah.
The loss
Yes.
really hit them hard. And I wonder sometimes if their ability to transition so well kind of did the same thing that it did in me of I don't recognize how hard this actually is. And so that's been a part of that process is just recognizing, hey, Dad, like we left our friends right in the middle of that pandemic, and then we followed you to Malta, and at the same time they'll say, I miss Malta, and we were only there for 90 days, right? Like so it was a great experience. There were wonderful
Yes.
things, but it was really heavy, and it was hard for all of us. Like it was incredible.
But
And I think the second or the second language learners culturally there are my wife and I. They have experience. They've grown up with us, so it's normal. But it was hard on the two of us as parents. And so there was higher tensions and frustrations, and then they
sure,
have to experience that as well. So
sure,
it was big
sure.
impact for all four of us.
So the highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
one of the things that they had, Jerry, was you on their side. I mean, and with having a,
Right.
cross-cultural guru who can, although you can sort of step back a little bit
Yeah.
and see your kids in a different light from the way that we can't see ourselves, right? So
Yes.
they had the benefit of someone in the room who had sort of an overall a
Yeah.
different sense from they had. So
Well,
I just
I
have to
mean,
say
you're very kind
they're
and
so
generous
lucky.
with yeah, but I think we did have the insight to be
Yes.
able to look at the whole situation and
Yeah.
say, okay, I know why this is happening. I know why we're not being nice to each other right
Mm,
now. This is
mm,
transition, right? Like
yeah.
I know why I'm exhausted and just I know why I feel depressed. I know I can say why this is happening, and yet there was a certain powerlessness to do anything about it.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
think that was one of the aha moments for me. And I think I'd experienced some of that before, but not to this level. Yeah, like I know about this stuff and I understand it, but I don't get out of it, right? Like that doesn't
No, we can't
uh,
escape it.
you can't. No. You may have some resources to change how you respond to it and to act differently, which I think we did, and we failed to do at times, right?
Yeah. Well, we are human.
We are, and unfortunately, there's just no way to.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's pretty fortunate. I'm glad I can eat. I
See,
like eating.
that's why I like you so much, Doreen. You bring sunshine to every part of it. I love
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know.
it.
Living in my eighth country, there are moments when I think, boy, you
Sure.
crazy just
You don't
moved
get out of it. You don't
in.
even the Queen of Sunshine. You still gotta have some dark days, right?
Oh, you have to. But you know what you know what, Jerry? If I look for the discomfort, I almost prefer
Hmm.
some level. Now, I have my boundaries on discomfort, but I have living in cultural discomfort where there's some rumblings
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
That makes me come alive.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Me too. I love that.
And you and I, we love this.
Yeah.
And so, although it's hard, and it's hard in some ways that I still can't identify are hard,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
I find that it's one way to stay alive when you have hit your 70s. I
That's
think
great.
everybody should go overseas in their 70s.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I think why wouldn't you? But
Exactly, but not everyone. Thank
that's
goodness we're
true.
not
That's
all
true.
like us.
That's
And
true.
so, looking back on these valuable lessons, how have these changed your worldview right now?
Yeah. No, that's a big question.
Sorry.
No, no, I love big questions. I think that's great. I will say this. Here's my answer. I've got a good answer for it. I don't know.
Mm,
Um,
hmm.
and that like it's the perfect answer because I think my worldview has been changed more dramatically with I don't know
Oh,
than anything else. And that's actually just a really wonderful place to be of
agree.
instead of trying to know everything and having an answer and then going to battle over that answer. There's just something really authentic and true and real about, yeah, I don't know. I would like to know. I'd like to learn more.
Mm,
I would like to have more information, but honestly, I don't know. And I think the uncertainty of this whole mess of this experience, I was already there to some extent, but the uncertainty of this mess really showed me more than any experience I've ever had how much I don't know.
yes.
And And I'm okay with that. I've come to that was part of my reconciliation with myself.
Mm.
It's just saying it's okay, Jerry. You're not supposed to know.
Yeah.
Uh,
You can't know it all, and we
yeah,
don't need to know it all.
no,
But
and it
what,
doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't
yeah,
mean you can't learn, right?
right, right. And grow and
And
expand
grow. Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
expand. Yes. And that's what I was saying about the being uncomfortable. I find that growth is uncomfortable, but I have to put myself in a position of it being a bit hard in order to feel like I'm growing.
Yeah, yep, yep. That's where the good stuff comes, right? Like that's where the lessons are.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
the hard stuff.
So, this has been wonderful, and I know that this is part of the repatriation diary series. It's going to be 30 subjects. Do you have one or two specific things that you see as trends happening in the repatriation circles?
Hmm. Yeah, that's another great question. And I knew it would be. You're good at questions. I think it's a really interesting season right now because things are ramping back up, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we're pretty sure we've made it through this COVID thing, which that put like it threw a wrench in everything. There were moments of are we ever going to recover? Some of us were really hopeful and saying, yeah, it's just, I mean, this is going to pass, but then it just kept going and going and going. And so from a trend perspective, I think we learned so much through that pandemic season of repatriation that we've probably got a lot more insight than we had before. We had to do something like you were saying, right? Like there's great learning in those hard moments. Well,
Mhm.
that was full volume. And so it would be it's inevitable that we
Mm.
learn some things, right? And so I think the fact that more people are paying attention to it would be a trend, right?
Yeah,
Finally, we're recognizing that there's more than one transition when
yes,
people move abroad, and I really I hope to see. I don't have stats on that or anything, but I really hope that companies around the world, corporations who are sending people to do
yes, yeah,
jobs with great salaries and all those things that you and I talk about all the time, right? Like
yeah,
you've got all these things, but you've still got this mess to figure out, and it's still hard on your family, and this is why assignments fail, all of that.
true.
I really hope to see a higher percentage of people who are the senders recognize that if you don't take care of people on the way out and really help them repatriate well, then you're not only doing them a huge disservice, but you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, right? Like it
Sure,
changes what happens for you as a company when you
sure,
don't take care of people in that way. And unfortunately, it
absolutely.
has a huge impact on families. So, like, I don't know that I can speak definitively as to whether it's a trend, but what I've seen happening is we're learning through this
Yeah,
mess.
yeah,
And I really hope that the trend is we figure those things out and we help people in that that other transition. I won't say the final transition
sure.
because you and I both know it's never final. We're not done yet.
Apparently not.
Bring it on. Bring more
Yes,
transition. I
yes,
say
yes.
very, very, very quietly. I won't say that too loud
No, no,
on the
no.
last transition,
We don't want the whole universe to hear it.
right, I still long for it, and look forward to it, but
Yes.
differently, not like this one.
One of the things that I've discovered is that I'm much more interested in death and dying now that I've moved to Mexico. I feel much more comfortable. Well, I'm in
Yeah,
my
yeah.
70s now, and I've got to
Yeah.
face it. And I never did before because I never thought I'd grown
You
up.
just didn't ever think that was a
I
reality,
was
right?
I was
Yeah.
Petra Pan,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so I just find that dealing with transitions all the time and helping people through them, it really can build this wonderful, wonderful wholeheartedness,
Yeah, yeah,
which I find is actually like a pill for the bittersweet moments that we also carry with us.
yeah, yeah. That's so
So
good.
it's
So
this
good.
end. Now you have a podcast. called
I
Diesel and
do.
Clooney. Can you
Diesel and
tell
Clooney.
a wee bit about Diesel and Clooney and how people can find you at Diesel and Clooney?
Yeah, you can find it wherever you find podcasts, whatever your podcast platform is. Diesel and Clooney Unpack the World. It's myself and my good friend Chris O'Shaughnessy, and we really, it was during that pandemic, actually, while I was in Malta, we started just having some regular conversations as friends. And I remember saying to Chris, we had one call, and I was like, I need this. I'm not connecting with people. I would really just like to talk. And so we started talking, and every time we did, we would share stories, and we thought, this would be fun to just do on a podcast. And so we did it. We don't put a whole lot into it. Like we
No.
we don't we don't schedule anything. He'll
Yeah.
he'll
Yeah.
ping me and say, "Hey, you want to do an episode?" And we do it, and we'll have guests on and we talk. But what we thought was interesting about the two of us was that he grew up, cross-cultural his entire life. He was military, and
Yeah.
his father was military, and so he was that quintessential
Okay.
TCK. I've got some of that DNA in there somewhere, but I never got to experience it until I was in my late 20s, even early 30s. But I was raising kids
Yes.
who were that. And so we love to just kind of bring any topic together and look at it from a couple of different angles and just explore things, and we have fun with it. That's really what
That's the most important thing. Well, this has been a fun conversation.
I expected.
If you were to be the fairy godfather of all of repatriation and that huge transition that is involved, what one superpower would you grant everyone who is on this path?
I think it has to be patience. I'm trying to think of something, but that's really the piece that I needed the most, and
Yeah.
and the part that was
Yeah.
that made it the most challenging. It wasn't that things were so terrible. I look back and I think we had some good times in there. We had some golden moments, and they were wonderful. And I watched my kids grow through that. I watched our marriage not only survive, but come to a place of really figuring those things out and doing well with them. But
Patience is a wonderful gift.
there were days when I was just done. I was just like, I don't know how much more of this I can take, but I didn't have anything else to do. I didn't have anywhere to go. And so it just really felt helpless and hopeless.
And hard.
And I think so. Maybe it's foresight, even. Maybe it's not patience. Maybe it's that recognition that the time is coming. It'll be better, right? That's the hardest thing to see when you're in it.
Yes, yes. I love what you said about foresight. Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate it. And I know that our listeners who are about to transition or who are currently who have transitioned will benefit from this. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Doreen. It's been great.